The collection starts off evolved with Reacher taking walks right into a small shop making plans to promote an antique vinyl file. The store proprietor slightly appears at it announcing it as previous. However, Reacher argues that university college students on the town might possibly purchase it earlier than he can say. Extra, a vehicle pulls up outdoors straight away grabbing his interest. Seconds later it crashes right into a parked vehicle, and a person in it pulls out a gun grabbing a teenage boy. From the automobile, Reacher movements rapid, prepared to step in. However, the kidnapper fires a spherical of bullets, his manner forcing him to take cold. He waits for the proper second, and whilst the auto begins off evolved pulling off, he fires returned. His shot lands, making the automobile spin out earlier than slamming into every other vehicle. Losing no time, he's taking out. The gunman rushes to the boy and tells him they want to go away now. Earlier than backup arrives, as they may be approximately to run. Every other guy fees at them. Reacher reacts right away, taking him down with a shot. However, whilst he appears nearer, he realizes the person is a federal agent. Understanding he's simply stepped into a first-rate mess, he grabs the boy and takes to the air. Their breakout would not final length the 11 though, due to the fact a police officer spots them and begins off evolved chasing them. The chase receives excessive, with Reacher the use of each trick he is aware of to shake off the cop. After some time he eventually loses them and reveals a quiet spot to cover with the boy. He tells him to name for assist, making it clean that he desires to disappear rapid due to the fact that he simply took out a federal agent with an unlicensed gun. However, the boy, determined, begs him to live. He says his father has sufficient strength to repair this and make all of it disappear, specifically due to the fact that Reacher turned into simplest looking to store him. Reacher is not satisfied, however listens. Bayside, calm with politeness, asks him to simply go with it. With a sigh, Reacher steps out, letting the bodyguard do his test. 11 though the fellow's mindset is some distance from pleasant. As soon as the hunt is carried out, they may be eventually allowed within the huge residence. Richard introduces Reacher to his own circle of relatives and additionally to Chapman Duke, the top of safety. After the introductions, Reacher is taken to fulfill Richard's father Zachary, a person with extreme strength and have an impact on the alternate greetings, and Zachary, actually thankful, gives Reacher a drink as a small gesture of thank you for saving his son. Reacher turns down the drink as they speak. Zachary asks him to give an explanation for precisely what passed off in the course of the abduction. Try Reacher doesn't maintain returned, announcing the man Zachary employed to shield Richard is absolutely vain. He factors out that the assault become deliberate from the begin. However, the so known as bodyguard best recognize observed the threat on the remaining 2D, almost letting the abductors win. Reacher makes it clean that each one he wishes is an area to put low for some days and a few coins to shop for a faux ID so he can disappear. Zachary, understanding it might not be easy, admits that given that Reacher stored his son's existence, he now owes him. He guarantees to assume it over. Simply as Reacher is ready to go away, he grabs the untouched glass of liquor, protecting it for a second earlier than putting it. Backtrack, he tells Zachary that if he desires to run his fingerprints, he may as properly make it smooth for him. Zachary, barely amused, news tells him now no longer to take it in my view, announcing he simply wishes to recognize precisely who he is handling. Reacher would not flinch and sincerely reminds him that he is the only who stored his son. Later that night time, Reacher reveals Richard in his room portrait. He casually factors out how odd it's miles that Zachary hasn't, in my view, checked on can observe orders. Reacher isn't always pleased, approximately the concept given that it is each reckless and unlawful. However, Zachary makes it clean that that is the best manner ahead and not using an actual choice. Reacher choices up the gun, spins the cylinder and pulls the cause. He does this almost 4 instances earlier than Zachary all at once takes the gun, returns searching. Glad with a nod, he accepts Reacher into his group as they go away the room. Reacher tells Duke to go back his gun, however Duke refuses. He says handling Polly is already sufficient and he doesn't need any other loose cannon. Taking walks round with a gun, smirking, Reacher claims he wasn't fooled and knew the gun wasn't loaded the entire time. Duke maintaining and immediately face proves in any other case via way of means of displaying that the gun changed into absolutely loaded. This definitely catches Reacher off defend. Reacher then asks what they might have finished if he had definitely ended himself. Duke with zero emotion says they might have treated it much like they did with the closing man. Later Reacher is taken to his new room. Duke tells him that he is beginning painting's first component with inside the morning. However, Reacher definitely isn't pleased, approximately the timetable. Duke then factors out that even as Beck would possibly consider him, he does not. As soon as Reacher is in the end by myself, he very well examines the room for hidden cameras. After ensuring no person is looking, he pulls a hidden telecell smartphone from his shoe and dials Susan. The decision is brief, however he confirms that he is in some days in advance. Reacher sits via way of means of the roadside, quietly looking the whole lot round him. He spots a younger boy looking to Scouseborough and at once stops him. As opposed to creating a scene, he arms the child a few cash and tells him to discover sincere paintings proper. After that he sees the person he has been maintaining an eye fixed on taking walks out of a constructing in Steppy and music down Quinn for his personal project to make this painting. She admits that Richard's kidnapping become absolutely staged, the whole lot become planned to make Reacher seem like a hero. Advantage Zachary's agree with and get him interior. Over the following few days the crew fine-tunes each element to make sure the plan run easily. Stephen 1 and all their operatives is assigned to play the shooter with inside the faux kidnapping he practices, making the assault appearance as actual as viable. The use of faux bullets, even the staged homicide of a cop become a part of the setup designed to make certain. Reacher had no preference however to head underground again with inside the gift. Reacher is prepared to execute his project. He assures Susan that he's going to test Beck's property for whatever suspicious. That nighttime, as soon as the whole residence is asleep, he actions the use of the roof as an access factor. He sneaks in the identical constructing wherein the Russian roulette sport came about. As he cautiously explores he stumbles upon an underground cellar. What he unearths catches him off. Protect a sparkling half-eaten plate of meals. Without losing time he pulls out the hidden telecell smartphone from his shoe and calls Susan. Her first query is whether or not Teresa is there. Simply then Reacher spots a bracelet. He tells Susan that Teresa isn't there, however she in reality turned into. Over the decision Susan insists that Teresa turned into in reality being held there. She asks if there may be whatever else and Reacher mentions the half-eaten plate of meals. This makes Susan recognize that Teresa is being fed and brought care of despite the fact that she turned into abducted. However Reacher Speedy reminds her that this is not desirable information. If they are preserving her alive it is due to the fact they want her for something, and which means hassle. As the decision ends Reacher spots Duke pulling up in his automobile and Speedy hides. In the meantime Susan finishes th. Susan is hiding below the automobile seeking to live as quiet as feasible. She's additionally seeking to take hold of the screwdriver it is out with inside the open. Seeing her attain out to it Reacher slides the screwdriver below the automobile together along with his leg. Furthermore, due to the fact Susan had already switched the plates Reacher easily dismisses the priority. He insists that it is simply any other automobile, certainly considered one among many comparable fashions with inside the town. Angel believes that a military cop could recognize such things as those, so he dismisses his difficulty as properly happy. Angel doll drops Reacher off at Beck's domestic. Getting out of the automobile Reacher proceeds to move into the mansion. However Angel calls him out, telling him that they may be imagined to burn the automobile that he stole in advance, but Reacher motives that he's worn out, so Angel comes to a decision to do it himself. Upon coming into Reacher sees that his room's door is barely open. Simply then he notices the maid exiting his room. This right now increases crimson flags. His room does not require cleansing, making her presence fairly suspicious, so he asks the maid if Duke requested her to look his stuff, including that he failed to convey something with him. The maid is aware of that is real due to the fact she failed to discover any laundry. After a short communique Reacher we could it slide for now. Trying to relaxation he lies down, however his time to relaxation is reduced quick. While Zachary knocks and enters he informs Reacher that there may be paintings to do, then leaves. But earlier than averting Beck visits his son, assuring him that the abduction incident might not appear once more. But Richard explains to his father that he's scared for his existence on every occasion while he seems at himself with inside the reflect some other place on the fitness center. Reacher has a disturbing interplay with Paul Van Hoven aka Polly. Polly inquires approximately Ray says Beck has questions on Angel's voicemail for the reason that Angel is not answering his telecell smartphone. Duke orders Reacher to return back at the site of No Hazard to seize a weapon. Reacher follows in Beck's workplace. Beck says Angel's message hyperlinks the pickup plates to a acquainted organization. However Reacher's description of the kidnapper does not suit every person from there. Beck begins off evolved doubting him. However Reacher shows the organization would possibly have employed new humans. He pushes for extra information, however Beck refuses and sends him to his room. Reacher makes use of a hidden telecell smartphone in his boot heel to name Negley. She says Polly as soon as injured superiors with inside the Navy and met Angel with inside the brig whilst serving time for sexual attack. She additionally well known shows Duke was a cop and gives to assist. However Reacher turns her down, announcing the goal is just too risky. Whilst he mentions the goal is a person he killed years in the past. Negley right away guesses Quinn and needs to understand wherein he's. Reacher hangs up. Understanding the decision is untraceable, he then calls Duffy asking her to depart a automobile with garments in a towel close by after middle of the night. Till then he naps. At nighttime he strips to his undies and swims alongside the coast. Duffy waits via way of means of the automobile and texts Squaw announcing Reacher is not there, but simply then a soaking moist and nearly naked Reacher walks out of the woods, startling her. She fingers him the bag of garments, elevating an eyebrow as he adjustments. Moving into the driver's seat, she insists on staying to look for Teresa at the manor. Reacher explains their plan to make Beck accept as true with the abductors might not go back. He additionally recollects a barn wind chimes and a creaking door, then tells her approximately Sergeant First Class Dominique Cole his buddy on the warehouse. They climb over the fence and razor twine internal She sneaks some other look they component methods and he swims again, hiding Angel's gun a few of the rocks earlier, then heading internal with inside the morning. Beck is panicked, approximately lacking drivers. Reacher gives to assist, so Beck tells him to take Richard into Metropolis for purchasing. As they depart, Reacher speeds beyond the Gat residence, forcing Polly to leap apart. Richard warns him now no longer to debris, with Polly calling him a psycho. Reacher asks why Beck we could a psycho stay in his residence, and Richard explains that B is simply in Price now no longer his father. He says McCabe is even worse than Polly, whilst Reacher asks approximately Beck and McCabe's enterprise. Richard insists that Bazaar Handiest sells rugs at a toy keep. Richard buys an antique toy gun for his father's birthday. Even as Richard is internal, Reacher calls Duffy and tells her a massive order is coming, and he says he desires a advertising to Duke's role, so Duke needs to be eliminated. Duffy sends Beck a phone message from Angel to set a entice. In the meantime, Richard leaves the shop together along with his purchasing bag, however runs into three former high school classmates. The lead one takes his bag and stomps on it, breaking the toy gun in her. Reacher arrives and warns them to go away. Richard on my own, however, whilst they do not want, he fights the trio and leaves them at the floor on the transport yards. Duffy and GMO spot Beck's vehicles departing with shipment from Slip 7. Duffy critiques the manifest on Angel's PC, and by accident we could it slip that Reacher kills Angel. They comply with the vehicles again on the town. Reacher holds the two damaged portions of the toy gun collectively as Richard emerges from an ice cream parlor with cones. Reacher shows that a few epoxy need to repair the toy. Richard fingers him a cone of lavender infused ice cream, however Reacher throws his away. Richard opens up approximately